This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Get a whole month free at mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. Many people seem to associate Gaspar Noé solely with his obsession with violence, sex, and Dutch angles wrapped in vibrant colors and funky credits. And while that's generally true, he's also an incredibly detailed director equipped with technical skills that allow him to masterfully realize his visions in an unprecedented manner. This is especially evident in Irreversible, Noé's controversial 2002 film about a woman's lover and her former boyfriend seeking vengeance after she becomes a victim of a rapist. Because Irreversible tells its story in reverse chronology, everything that happens on screen tends to be motivated by and working for this notable structure, reminding its strangeness and reinforcing its symbolic significance. From the very first shot, we witness Noé's ghostly camera freely roaming around a room with occasional jitteriness, creating an illusion of a rewinded footage. The randomness of the movement itself adds to the effect, as there is no discernible pattern to the camera's path that indicates that the scene is playing as it should. The arbitrary and unmotivated movement gives an objective view of the situation, which entails two men discussing horrendous crimes they've committed to set the tone for the film, while also allowing for a seamless edit as the film slowly transitions from present to past. When the camera does show its motivation by scattering clockwise rotation about in key junctures of the film, we're challenged to meditate on this blatant pattern in relation to the concept of time and its irreversibility. The film goes as far as opening and ending on the abstractified version of the rotation, beginning the film with a credit roll that mimics this clockwise movement and ending with a rapidly strobing image that hides the rotating shot of a snowy sky. Without the white inserts, we can see the orbiting camera that quite literally passes through time and space. The revolving camera may just be an artistic choice to a certain degree, but it still prompts an interesting discussion about the film's linkage to time, as a clockwise revolution is a counterintuitive choice for a film that runs backwards. Of course, it can also be argued that while the camera is circling right, the portrayed picture itself is actually swirling counterclockwise, validating the reverse chronology structure of the film. But that's not important, as this philosophical idea, which involves multiple levels of interpretation that we'll get to, isn't exactly the film's immediate interest for now. Instead, its main ambition with the camera seems to lie in bringing the audience closer to the chaotic life of the three protagonists. For instance, the camera constantly zooms in and out like a heartbeat to both intensify its atmosphere and to imitate a real person, namely the audience themselves, following these characters as they frantically drift around the city. The zooms, which happen in scenes where characters are uncertain or anxious, subtly breathe and sync for the audience with the nervousness presented on screen. Speaking of sync, the camera goes as far as to dramatically move with the beat of an actual heartbeat when Marcus encounters Alex after the incident. Alex? This may seem somewhat excessive, but given how this effect is meant to be a recurring concept that builds the film and connects the audience to its narrative and characters, it is an excusable move. As to prove this theory, the following shot where Alex gets on the ambulance is accompanied by a more organic jolting of the camera, matched with the heartbeat. Now, this doesn't mean that the zooms and the move-ins are only used for intense segments of the film. Although very subtle, we also see the camera slightly and artificially zooming in right as Marcus takes a line, aiding the audience to tune in with the protagonists even in their upbeat moments. There are many more examples of sophisticated camera tricks utilized in this film, but the most poignant example is probably the infamous tunnel scene where Alex runs into Latenia. In this notorious scene, Noé chooses to pin the camera to the ground and run the scene uncut, instead of having the camera move around or adding inserts and cuts to show different angles. By having the camera stationary and in line with Alex, the victim, the audience is unconsciously united with her and not with the predator. According to Noé himself, this choice was made to minimize the chance of the viewers accidentally associating the scene more with the predator than the victim, which might have been the case if the camera was agile.
Et du coup, il faut qu'on s'identifie à Monica, qui joue le rôle d'Alex, et pas aux autres, encore moins à son agresseur.
Everything is in tune. The breathing, the heartbeat, the movement, and the perspective designed and actualized by the camera. And the resulting effect is a sense of immersion that precedes the film's analysis of various metaphysical topics. What I distinctly remember from watching this film for the first time and many times afterwards is how nauseous I became as the film progressed. What I didn't know was that the feeling of vertigo is in fact a premeditated tactic of the film to plunge the audience into its nightmare before it even truly begins. We've already discussed the spinning and zooming camera, but the disorganized movements also include flips, tilts, Dutch angles, and whip pans that attack the screen with visual overload and are capable of causing mild to severe motion sickness. But Noé wouldn't stop there. What accompanies the revolting camera work are hidden audio tricks that further magnify the physical symptoms. The central score used in the first 30 minutes of the film is the legendary Thomas Bangalter's Rectum, named after the club the characters enter to seek vengeance. The scene that employs this piece is one of the most repugnant scenes of the entire film to begin with, presenting a violent depiction of revenge paired with the most uncontrolled camera work and appalling red lights that overwhelm the screen.
Pardon monsieur, vous allez où là? Un mec qui s'appelle Latenia ici. C'est pas mon problème monsieur, faut payer.
But the score, which features an ambulance-like synth pad that constantly crescendos and decrescendos, commands the scene with the utmost discomfort as it repeats this motif over and over again with only slight variations. This sound is heard as Marcus and Pierre madly swarm through the crowded club, and an overly rapid drum and bass piece is overlapped on top to contrast the atmosphere the main melody is creating. This drum and bass sound, of course, is part of the original score, but with everything that is going on, the illusion of the two songs playing simultaneously is maintained. This contrast creates tension, as there is a steady tune that suggests confusion and a disruptive attack of the drums that signal danger. In another sense, the fluctuating synth pad feels sluggish and inebriated, while the drum appears ready and hypervigilant. The mix of these two seemingly opposing emotions actually work together under a unifying sense of extreme intoxication, complementing the event unfolding on screen and enhancing the intended impression of vertigo. But that's not all. Blended in this meticulous score is a nearly inaudible background frequency of around 30 Hz, commonly known as being similar to the frequency produced by an earthquake that causes vertigo. This is what the low frequency noise sounds like when you separate it from the main track. The conventional belief that the frequency used is exactly 28 Hz or that it's the primary cause of nausea are not exactly valid. But sound waves that crush your ears can definitely make you sick, especially with prolonged exposure. And although the effect may vary from person to person, it is nonetheless a fascinating gimmick and one that at least sustains the overall mood of the film. Then there is the structure. The film is divided into 14 scenes separated by the transitions, of which 3 of them actually belong to a single event. If we consider these 3 scenes as one, the film actually counts 12 distinct events that are played in reverse, with the most pivotal act involving the horrific assault coming in at number 6 and 7, right in the middle. In fact, the tunnel scene, which is essentially the turning point of the narrative, takes place 48 minutes into the film that runs 97 total minutes. This means the film literally hits the half mark as Alex gets attacked. Before getting to why this is significant, let's look at how carefully the scenes have been selected to achieve the optimal tempo. Having to shoot the film with only 3 pages of script and relying heavily on improvisation, Noé had initially shot other scenes that ultimately got cut out of the film. For instance, there was originally a scene of Alex on a hospital bed that would have followed the police interrogation scene before we see her on a stretcher. This should be quite intuitive, but introducing Alex in the hospital would have considerably lessened the impact of her first on-screen appearance. By cutting this scene, the film leaves the audience with the most tragic and unexpected first encounter, mirroring the shock the characters are going through and establishing a shared experience between them and the audience. With the previously discussed visual and auditory techniques, the traumatic illustration is engraved and carried over to the next and the most disturbing scene of the film. The reason why the film has the tunnel scene as its midpoint is because it is supposed to act as a center of axis that signals the turning point for the film's style. With this scene as the anchor, the film discreetly and gradually transforms from being turbulent to composed. The scenes are brighter with more depth and clarity, the conversations are grounded, the characters are lively, the world is full of color, and the camera is stabilized. As a matter of fact, and as you can see in this comparison, the 2 parts are almost reflective of one another, functioning like a palindrome, only with different fonts. This is one of the main reasons why there are so many callbacks and foreshadowing in this film, ranging from a simple line and graphic matches to more complex dialogue and color changes that urge reevaluation of all that has happened. Examining the dynamic between characters reveal their motivation, inspiration, and destiny. It gives an understandable explanation for their actions, big or small, and how each utterance, no matter how trivial, eventually led to their cruel fate. Every foreshadowing bears different meaning depending on the direction you view the film in. Callbacks become prophetic and foreshadowing déjà vu. What Irreversible does by unfolding its story backwards is placing the audience in a meta space of memories, where they don't strike our conscious minds until they've fleeted from the place of relevancy. The film only grants us the earlier stages of the story for the first time after the horrific events have taken place, pressuring us to observe its irony, drowning us in the harrowing inevitability of what has already come and past. There's no going back, except in reminder of how beautifully mundane the hours prior have been. Time reveals all, including the bitter truth that the human desire for justice can never outrun the oft-times incomprehensible fate the universe has in store for the ordinaries. Just as the ways of the world stops us from going back in time, this film keeps all from going forward. Past, future, or otherwise, they are all irreversible, and that's why the film is the way it is. After all, how could anxiously moving forward hurt more than hopelessly regretting an irreversible event? I watched all Gaspar Noé films back to back for this video, including his 2015 film Love, which is available for streaming in Canada right now on Mubi, the sponsor for today's video. Mubi is a curated streaming service showcasing exceptional films from around the globe. Every day, Mubi premieres a new film, from iconic directors to emerging auteurs, and since every film is hand-selected, it's a great way to watch films you love and discover new films you haven't seen before. Like I said, you can watch Gaspar Noé's Love from Mubi's library today if you're in Canada, but there are plenty of amazing films to choose from even if you're elsewhere, so I urge you to give them a visit. In fact, you can get an extended 30-day free trial if you sign up using my link at mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. That's mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. So go check it out, and thanks for watching.